Well, it's the end of groups. We've got our final six. Only two more teams to go down before we get best of fives. Huh. That'll be interesting. Not before another. It's like. How many games again? It's the 36 games? Another 36 games. We got 36 more games before we get to that point. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Hi, welcome back to Vision Denial and Clearing MSI. I'm Sebastian or Sam, either or, for the moment. And I have, for people who have not watched this channel before, I watch all the playoff series from all 12 regions that would usually participate. We're at Vietnam. And then I spend that time then feverishly and geekishly analyzing the professional play of international tournament competitions. And this one is not included. So this is the 6th episode of our Clearing Vision for MSI, where I'm going to be taking a clearer picture of what has happened during the day and seeing what we can glean from it and what we can expect. Now, today, in my head, I came up with the title just as I was starting. It was like, we're going to detonate expectations because a lot of expectations were detonated, except for Infinity. Little poor ones over here. They didn't detonate many expectations. In fact, they kind of fizzled. It's really unfortunate. But first things first, we got to go from game to game. Starting with the game I think that set the mood for the entire day are Cloud9 versus Damwon. And, well... Oh, I should probably put my phone away. It did set the mood, not just for the day, but for me for the rest of the tournament in terms of the middle four teams that are competing that'll be in the Rumble stage. And by this I mean, I had emphasized during the Road to MSI series that Damwon Gaming were big question marks regarding their early game and how they would play, despite the fact that they're very good at closing out games. And that Cloud9 were a big question mark because they don't close out games very well. In fact, they tend to drag them on for a long period of time, but they have very solid early games. They primarily focus on that. And I'm surprised that this didn't happen the first game these two faced off against each other, but this is more or less what kind of game I expected out of these two teams going into the tournament, except with Damwon actually closing out and not goofing off. I mean, oh, my cat wants to leave for some reason. Right. So let's go step by step. I think the compositions themselves are fine. I am still not a fan of teams opting into complicated compositions, especially if they are not necessarily going to be way above and beyond. And granted, the expectation of Damwon was to be the team that was above and beyond most of the other teams, except for maybe Royal Never Give Up. But in this situation, not so much. I don't know what it is, but they haven't gotten a foothold on how to organize their win conditions early game. They manage to get a good semblance of a tempo lead at the first couple of the first 5 to 10 minute mark, but Cloud9 have a better understanding of how the early game works and took advantage of that to, one, keep up at the places that they weren't in the tempo lead, but two, regain it at some point. And they traded this back and forth. The one thing I'm bothered by this, though, is that Cloud9 still have these tendencies to move around the map in inefficient ways for the sake of being there faster. And inefficient in the sense that sure, you might get there faster, but it will cost you in terms of being caught, getting killed, losing out in vision, giving away free information. Like, there are methods of moving around the map that is efficient that will not cost you those things. And this still allowed Damwon Kia to somehow have a better-ish early game for the first time. The issue, though, is that they couldn't amass a good enough gold lead. And to me, I think I wrote this down, is that... No, I didn't write this down, but this was the thing. I was not a fan of the fact that there was not a good enough ballooning of gold from either side whenever one team got the lead over the other. And this leads to a lot of opportunities for Cloud9 to come back on a lot of occasions, especially since I'm pretty sure they had the scaling composition. Yeah, they did. And so I'm just baffled in this game by how a team that is like praised for being a late game team that can play from behind very effectively does not realize that they should probably close out a game fairly early against a type of composition that they regularly play. And so I get questions for the future about, like, so Damwon, what are you going to do when it comes to facing off against, not even considering Royal Never Give Up, because that's more of a question of how much can you goad them into doing, like, weird fights. But I don't think you beat RNG in early game play, especially since you're this inconsistent, and especially if this is going to happen between Cloud9 and DFM. But how are you going to do so against, like, the Lions, like Mad Lions, who have, like, maybe not a super consistent early game, but a fairly solid one, at least in terms of how Elyoya plays it. And, like, PSG don't have, like, the best early game, but they also don't have a terrible one. They do actually absorb very well. So you have 4 teams at least that can play an early game more consistently than you, that are not even including Cloud, or that is, like, Cloud9 included. So I'm just, how often are you just going to put games at risk? I really want to see this just change. Like, something has to give. So Cloud9 end up winning this game. It's a shocker for many people. I mean, I was a little surprised. I was still looking at the clock going like, okay, so when is the moment that Damwon, like, win the fight and win everything, right? Because that's the thing they do. But they didn't get away with it this time. Awesome. Thank you, Cloud9. Great. And awesome, like, the vast major improvement from you guys. 2 thumbs up. I'll talk about it more on the other game that they play, because this was more about how they would usually, like, play by standard. They play late game. They close better than usual, but they played their early game solid. They scaled into a composition, and they refused to die because they like giving hell to their teams. Solid things. They ended up 2-2 after this game, and Damwon Kia ended up 3-1 after this game, taking their first and I think their only loss. Yes, it was their only loss. Next, we're going to put these little bad boys back to where they're supposed to belong. Here. And then we're going to put Detonation, Focus Me, and Gillette Infinity. And I feel bad a little bit for Infinity. I was really harsh on them coming into MSI. They showed me one day of pretty good improvement, and then after that, or they showed me one day that they are able to play to the standard that I expected them to play before coming in. And then they just kind of fizzled. Just, like, a lot. They fizzled a lot. And I think it shows also in this game. Now, granted, I'm very happy that they will always consider playing a simpler composition over anything that might be complicated. But great, and they put some solid front-to-back compositions with some dive and neutral options for neutral objective options. And Detonation Focus Me, I'm pretty sure in this game, yeah, Detonation Focus Me, cleaned house here. This was like, so Infinity did some jungle tracking, they put some early vision, it was pretty good. The unfortunate aspect is that they used none of it. Just absolutely none of it. And so it allowed Detonation Focus Me, so DFM to gain a tempo lead. Um, and to establish proper vision, set up proper wave manipulation. They were able to play to their win condition. A 1-4 composition requires solid wave manipulation to properly push in, and so they did that well. They ballooned their lead incredibly. Like, this was from early in to later, from early on. They they solidly just take step by step by step by step the proper objectives. Like, this was a clean go at understanding what your win condition is, understanding what your opponent's win conditions are, and playing around those. And I gotta say, this is by far, like, outside of Pain being the team that showed the most improvement from like their start of their playoffs to the end, Detonation focused me as a team that I expect from Japan to at least perform fairly well and to show year after year after year that they improve as such. And when they didn't qualify for Worlds 2020, I was a little disappointed. But now that they've qualified for MSI and they've shown huge gains from this, and they had the same kind of issue, the same kind of like question marks that Paris Saint-Germain had for me in terms of like the rest of the region is not that competitive. They played much better than them, but not in any ways that I thought that was like impressive for me, right? And so I was always going to be curious about how do they compare against the other minor regions, especially since they come from a tier 4 region, or like from the pool 4. And honestly, this is probably the best team out of the non-legacy teams, out of the non-legacy regions, from the tier 3 and tier 4 teams, hands down. And I'll probably get a better chance to like explain why I think that is the case, outside of the fact that, oh, they beat Cloud9 and Cloud9 beat Damwon and they almost beat Damwon twice. No, it's like, it's less about the results themselves and more about the execution of what they were trying to apply. Because like, you could have plenty of teams that all beat the higher ups, and just because of like just because it was badly approached by the opponent, right? It was like more the enemy, more like the top team's game to lose than the lower tier team's game to win. But never once did I think that Detonation was playing a game where they were expecting the other team to make mistakes. They were always actively playing to their win conditions. And this is like a far cry of improvement to how they were playing in Japan, where most of the teams in Japan play for mistakes and not as much in terms of priority. Detonation usually is a little bit more creative with it, but I'm super happy about the execution they came from this. Infinity, however, is less so. They seem to play around one kind of win condition. They're fairly predictable on that front, and it's really easy to play around it. Even if people do get hyphy with it and try to like opt into Infinity's win conditions, but that aside, this is it feels really bad to see Infinity play this way. At least not as bad as Unicorns and the Wildcats, but it still feels pretty with that, Detonation focusing goes 2-2, leaving, I think, at that point, 1 or 2 games away from them to properly make it to the next stage. I think it was just 1. And then Infinity is 1-3, and I think they also weren't quite eliminated yet. We weren't at the stage where any team was eliminated after this game, which leads to the next game, and we're going to put you away, a little Detonation, and we're going to put Damwon. In which case, Infinity, though, does show something in this game. They play a little bit more complicated, but not so much that I'm like, oh no. They do play a 1-4 composition. I'm still a little wary from teams that are lower down the rung from playing 1-4 compositions. A lot of times they default back to team fighting, and they should probably not. They should probably focus on the win conditions themselves, and that shows usually a sort of how do I say it? A lack of understanding of limits that their team has. This is a very simple composition out of Damwon, and I'm really happy that they went with this on this game. They needed to show that they were not pushovers. They still showed that they're kind of pushovers. The one thing, though, let's see here. Yeah, so the one thing here is that Damwon at least play an early game that is good. Question marks. I don't think they had a very solid. Yeah, they're not ballooning their leads. Again, this was another situation where like the early game that was good did not lead to any particular ballooning of any leads. Like they need the gold lead to progressively increase and not stay at a certain amount. Especially since like if you do that, then it's really easy to swing the lead the other way and have the opponent balloon it quickly. Like it is absolutely paramount to make sure you do properly balloon this. And honestly, Infinity do actually punish them for this. Like they punish them for it, but at least, but unfortunately, they don't play to their win condition to do so. And this leads, and I wish I would read my notes more often, but this is more like I'm doing these off the cuff after I finish watching these games. But like as I mentioned, I'm not a fan of lower regions or a lot of teams playing 1-4 compositions because they don't play to the win condition. And this was the same case, right? Infinity did not play to their win condition during the entire time, despite the fact that like Damwon had all of the opportunity to take advantage of that, and Infinity had all of the opportunity to correct course and play to their win condition. They literally needed to make sure that they were able to delay with their 4, right? So they had over here Rumble, Nautilus, Tristana, and Zoe. That's like a sieging machine waiting to happen. It also has incredible disengage in and of itself, and you can absorb 5 easily with that and have your J split push. And that wasn't done enough. Bugax, unfortunately, I don't think is good with this kind of role. Don't give Bugax a split push role in a 1-4 composition. He like either that or like I hope that by the time your summer playoff comes around you've improved upon that, because it's not a good move. It really isn't. You probably would have been better off with a simple front to back with the option for Bugax to play a frontliner. Probably would have been a little better. Because of it, despite the fact that like the Infinity punishes Damwon on a number of occasions, including making it so that they don't have an efficient Baron, Damwon still regain their composure at the end of it, and then they end up winning the whole thing and closing out quickly, right? Again, they get away with being very poor, or very, I don't want to say poor or mediocre, but very, like, sloppy in terms of the early to mid game to just clean out really nicely in the late game. It doesn't give me cause, like, it kind of gives me, like, a little bit of concern regarding how that's gonna like how things are gonna end up. Where to what next? The next game that came from this is I think the actual important game of the series. It was the Cloud9 versus Detonation. We're gonna put away our little friends here. Okay. Ooh, you're a little small. There you go. Oh, too big. There you go. Versus Detonation. And my heart goes out to Detonation. Quite honestly, I'm more disappointed. Like, I don't want to be so presumptuous and say, oh, I'm a parent, I'm so disappointed. But, like, I'm a little disappointed. I kind of didn't want Cloud9 to qualify. Asterisk. I did not want Cloud9 that had performed the way they did in their first 3 days to qualify. This is slightly better out of Cloud9, just slightly. Right. Point being is that the way this game played out was kind of all over the place. And it really was unfortunate to see, not just from Detonation, but from Cloud9, for a myriad of, like... So let's do this step by step from, like, each point that I've gotten right here. So the first thing that I noticed here is that, like, Detonation opted into to a scaling comp, like a scaling comp that's pretty... that's literally the same thing that Infinity played the game before this, right? They've got Rumble, Tristana, Alistar, and Zoe, but instead of a Jace, they have a set. So functionally, it is still a 1-4 composition. They need the set to make sure that they can play off of the side lane. It still has an option for team fighting. It's a little awkward, but it's not. The intent here is still there to do a 1-4 composition. Whilst on the other side, Cloud9 have a very simple composition, very 5v5, heavy dive, has a bunch of neutral options. The only difference here is that it did need early leads to be able to, like, function, right? Because it doesn't scale as well as the other side. And this is where things kind of get a little loopy. Cloud9, you're the early game team. This is 2 games for 2 that you kind of fumble up on your early game, and, like, you recover very quickly. But, like, what is going on, right? You do this level 1 invade, and it goes to shit, like, just so quickly. Like, Blabber recovers, that's great, good job, but this was not a great level 1 out of you guys. You really could do better, like, so much better. Please, for my sake, especially since you're going to the Rumble stage, just please, for my sake. DFMs do take advantage of this mistake and gain a tempo lead and work with it. The unfortunate aspect is that they don't balloon well, and Cloud9 do still find ways to do the answering, and the game does this kind of thing where for, like, a little bit, I think there's, like, a trade of tempo lead 2 or 3 times before it, like, settles with Cloud9 for the rest of the game, where the difference being is that Cloud9 was more consistent with the way that they were answering the plays and also punishing misplays. They had better vision overall, which is weird because Detonation had, like, pretty solid vision up until this point. So I don't know why they were kind of just behind the ball on this one. And Cloud9 had pretty good neutral objective setups here. What really baffled me more than anything else also out of Detonation is that they gave up almost all of the Drakes, or all of the Drakes. It was just like they didn't contest the Soul Drake at all in an opportunity where they could have. They had all the opportunities to try it. This, however, is a good time to mention that Cloud9 did balloon their leads fairly well in this game, and it gives me a little bit of hope that, you know, they'll do well when it comes to, like, that they'll do well regarding, like, approaching Pentanet, possibly pair Saint-Germain and Mad Lions. So we'll see. And they have a very efficient Baron, and they close the game pretty well. DFM have a very lackluster defense at that point. And, well, that's what happens. Given that, C9 go 3-2, and Detonation Focus Me go 2-3, leaving the fact that the Cloud9 had to hope that that Detonation loses to Damwon to make sure that they qualify. And that being said, they kind of do. Right? So, let's see here. For this game, let's see. Right. I can appreciate that that Detonation definitely have a game plan for the day. They knew what they wanted to play. They stuck to that. Again, it's a lot more sieging with some team fighting and diving options. They have a set on the side lane, or they would have had a set in the side lane, but they have a Nocturne this time in the side lane for another 1/4 composition. So it functions similarly, but again, it's the same situation as the last time. It just feels different because Damwon doesn't play early games very well. All right. So DFM do a good job out of punishing Damwon's weird map movements early game. And Damwon, guys, what are you doing in early game? Like, your vision game was really weak in this game. Your vision in general was just really weak throughout it. And the only thing that you got going for you is that Detonation had not ballooned their lead properly, and Kazu seemed to be really out of it and out of his element playing this set. Kazu had, and it's really unfortunate that Kazu's not like their main support, and because of the visa things, but like, I'm trying to like process my thoughts from watching this game, because watching this game, it was very long. Detonation had done a lot of good stuff. They were just not ballooning the leads where they needed to. Damwon were answering different places that allowed them to keep up, and they did the whole thing where they were able to like come back in the late 20 minutes, at the late 20-minute mark. So, it just gives me some thoughts in terms of like, because this is the last game that Detonation get to play, right? And it's really unfortunate to see that they come very close to a lot of these games where they understand how to apply the pressure for the early game. They really hone in onto what is necessary to like get the ball rolling, but they don't get how to like balloon that and how to like snowball it to something that's significant so that they're able to play to their win conditions better. And it allows them to lose out on a lot of opportunities, and it allows them to get punished and have the other team come back a lot easier. And on the flip side, Damwon is similar, but the difference here is that they force themselves, or they like make themselves play on the back foot so often that it's just kind of concerning overall. And I sound like a broken record with this, but this is a point to be noted. If Damwon keep doing this, I don't see them being the ones that can compete or even make any contest against Royal Never Give Up. I just don't see it happening. But they're still, I think, the cleanest team in terms of closing out a game. They didn't do it so cleanly in this game, but they're still much cleaner than the everybody else that I've seen across every game that I've watched so far. So with that, Damwon solidify their score 5-1 and eliminate Detonation Focus Me, who finish their whole series, the whole run at 2-4. Leading us to our last game, which was goofy as heck. So we had ourselves Infinity. Oh, oops. This is what happens with OBS. Infinity versus Cloud9. And I'm going to be rather frank. I'm going to take this one only a little seriously. Mostly from the context of the fact that, like, these two teams clearly went in with the intent to, like, actually play their hearts out. Just, it's very loose. And the term loose being the theme word of the tournament. I appreciate that Cloud9 did some solo lane swaps. It allowed to absorb a lot of pressures, and it countered very well the way that the early game that Infinity wanted to play worked. I'm very happy that this time Infinity really honed into what they like to do. I just didn't like that they kept putting Boogax on a 1-4 split push. Really hindered and hurt them, because Cloud9 recognized that and went ham and punished it. This was a clean... Oh, this was not a clean. This was a good early game out of Cloud9. I just have questions for Blabber. Hey, Blabber, you got like a day to like chillax and just like reel it in your aggressivity. Reel it in. What's up, buddy? You keep making these really bizarre map movements and these really bizarre positional mistakes. What's going on? What's really the thing happening here? Just I hope that's because you're the really sore sticking point for Cloud9, and it's an easy point to like abuse and pick and just really like make sure that it's harder for your team to win. That being said, I think that the later the game went, Cloud9 was much better at approaching their Baron, was better at approaching the team fights, and was better at approaching how their win conditions applied, and how they would usually close, but they didn't close very cleanly, or not very efficiently in my opinion. They could have done much better, like much better, like significantly better. I mean, good job Infinity on the one game you beat Detonation on, but this is another case of the White Lotus has given too much responsibility for a team that really needed to reorganize the way that they approached their win conditions for each of their team. With that close, Cloud9 ends up at 4-2, being the 6th team to make it through the Rumble stage. And with that, we're going to put X's on all of our teams that didn't qualify, which is really unfortunate. And circles on all the teams that did qualify. Congratulations. So, with that, I also need to make an adjustment on the power ranking. Just a slight adjustment on 2 positions here. And I'm going to adjust that also with my personal one here. The fine folk from what I can see here, I had this is the final power ranking that I put yesterday, and I'm just gonna switch it out over. Oh my goodness, there you go. I'm gonna switch out just 2 ones from the way that I've seen Infinity play. They are less consistent at applying to their win conditions than Pentanet, and Pentanet seems to be more conscious and aware of their limits and at applying simpler compositions and understanding how they can win out things. The second change I'm going to do is I'm moving Damwon to 3rd. I do this with some reservations and like some asterisks here. The asterisks being that Mad Lions, I had previously expressed some concerns regarding like just their overall state of the play and how it was not as clean as it showed in Europe, and I had concerns about them compared to like Paris Saint-Germain and Royal Nevergup and Damwon. But their early games are much more consistent, and I appreciate that way more, and they seem to show a better understanding of their win conditions from like minute 1. And for that, I give them a slight edge, and that definitely could change. So, freeze frame if you want. This is the ranking given now that the group stages are gone, personally based off of performances that I've seen. And again, you let me know in the comments if you think this may be wrong, why not. Let me know. That being said, we have to say goodbye to a couple of these. So, yes. As these teams are no longer in, I'm going to now set it up so that it has just a left side and a right side for top 3 and bottom 3 of what I expect out of the Rumble stages. Here we go. So given the Rumble stages, this is the expected for me, the expected turnout. Now, this for me will also definitely change over time. A lot of people will definitely have this change because as tournaments progress, teams tend to get better, worse, or get a better understanding of the flow of things. My primary thought on this is that Cloud9 have yet to show me something more consistent, especially because of Blabber or because of like they're a little bit more loose and inconsistent regarding the way that they approach objectives. Hopefully by the time the day 1 of the Rumble stage or day 2 of the Rumble stage is done, they might have convinced me otherwise. Pentanet is last because they're last. I don't know what else to say other than the Australian team, as impressive as it is that they were able to beat the Unicorns, I don't see them being like capable of doing better than last. But hey, surprise me. Australia surprised me so many times in international tournaments. Please do. Fantastic. I will love it. World Never Give Up are by far my favorites, have been since day 1. Nothing again has been shown for me that would make it. The only difference is that they haven't played against as many teams, so maybe this will change as the Rumble stage approaches. And you know, I just explained the difference for me from Mad and Damwon not that long. So you let me know also about how you think this Rumble stage will go out. Do you think it's about the same? Let's tweak a little bit over there. Do you think Pentanet might actually do way better? Who knows? Do you think that Royal Never Give Up will lose a game? Let me know if your thoughts down below. Like and subscribe also if you enjoyed the video. Alright? I appreciate all of you who do watch this. It doesn't go unnoticed. It makes it a lot more fun for me to do. With that being said, there's at least one day off, so I won't be releasing a video obviously tomorrow because there's not that time for it. But we'll see you in the next one. And over here, I'll have the playoff for the Road to MSI series that I had, where I watched all of the playoff series from all 12 regions, which is how I got, which is where I make my educated analysis from. And on the other side, I'll have my Clearing Vision MSI playlist, where all of the videos so far for the tournament of MSI 2021 will be. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you Thursday. Yeah. Ciao.